Hello, and welcome again to Autistic Radio. We enjoy making these broadcasts for you. We also enjoy making them for ourselves, and that's really one of the main things about Autistic Radio. Autistic people having a project, something that they work on together, and something that achieves something for them. We have had various different projects over the time, and the project that we just completed this Friday was speaking at an international conference on autism. So not a large number of autistic representation there, not a large number of APOs. It's an American setup. There's quite a lot of ABA organisations there, and a very diverse group. So we set out to be a little bit controversial. We explained Autistic Radio as a safe space where autistic people and professionals could cooperate and work together, even on controversial subjects like behaviourism and ABA. But there we wanted to call out a problem. So I decided to take it upon myself to make a very personal presentation so that others could put their own personal ideas to it in a focus group, in a panel group. And I went out on a limb and I said that the people that we had worked with most recently, who were a professional organisation in any kind of long-term way, called the Autism Network, led by Richard Ibbotson, was a disgrace, in my opinion. How it worked out that the professions kept the autistic people away from making any meaningful contribution to what was supposed to be a co-production. I put it out there. I put it out there honestly. I didn't name the person like I'm naming now, but I really feel that as autistic people, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to say that including us actually means including us in co-production in an equal way. And that it's not good enough to just change the tokenism from the past and wash it over with some new buzzwords and then call it co-production. What it has to be is a meaningful inclusion of the autistic population. So, I don't know whether it will have any effect to call it out in this particular case, but practicing calling it out is a good thing for anybody who is advocating in any way for autism. Because even if we don't think sometimes there's a very big audience there, we still need to practice the skill of saying, no, this isn't good enough. Is there anybody else who wants to bring up anything for the meeting? I've rather dominated it with my diatribe there, guys.
No, not really. I mean, that was basically one of the main kind of pressing topics and workings that, that we've been concentrating on in recent times. So that's well fine. And I'm looking forward to further projects that we'll be doing in the future that you've already kind of talked about in previous meetings.
Yeah,
Sorry, mate. No, it's just your latter comments are enough to digest for just now.
Just for my own benefit, what did I miss last Tuesday? When I was other commitments? Was a meeting or a podcast that was done?
Crikey! Do you know what we did? We recorded another podcast, and it was a good one as well.
Yep.
Let me just go back to that. Can you remind me, Ray? Who did we speak to? Is it Gina? Gina Carlberg.
Before and after, yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel about the recording with Gina?
Myself, yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah. You see, that's what we're getting from these people, isn't it? We're getting these really progressive people who are working in ABA and PBS.
Yeah, she was very open. Yeah, but that's why I said before and after. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it at that. I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, you're right to bring that up, Harry. We have made a lovely podcast in the end of the series of ABA PBS, the Big Autism Conversation, and Gina's been with us twice. This is the second time. Previously, she discussed a kind of schism in psychiatry. She described how her mum, who was also a psychiatrist, was at a university where the behaviourists were in one section of the university and the Freudians were in another section of the university, and they kind of fought with each other in a, you know. And this time she came back and she described some things that initially, completely to me, sound as though she was speaking from a straight out neurodiversity advocacy point of view. You know, that you couldn't get a fag paper between what she was saying and what the loudest of the advocates say.
Yeah, you had to ask her at one point what her relationship was with autism. Yeah.
Do you know, I felt that. I felt that at one point, yeah. But then, you know, she is from a Scandinavian background, so there is a difference in communication anyway.
What was is it United States or UK?
She's UK. I think she's. I don't think she's from the Irish group, but we've got an Irish group that are working with us a bit as well. Now, I think she's from the UK bit because she works with Andrew Swartfigger. In fact, Andrew Swartfigger is her boss at whatever he's with now. It used to be Beyond Autism. I think now it's called Positive Behaviour something.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the update.
She quoted a couple of people related to the Australian group, didn't she, at one point? I'm going through my notes here trying to find it, but rather than rustle your ears, I'll switch off.
Well, she actually quoted and used as reference Damien Milton, you know, the the autistic advocate's friend in research. Actually, you know, we might have a tiny bit of a chance in speaking with Damien, because one of our collaborators on the behaviourism project is the professor who is a friend of his and who emailed us to say how he felt as though the conversation edit that he had with us had been very fair, and he could see what the point of the whole thing. He's been very supportive, so we might be able to call in something eventually on that front.
Yeah, that would be great. I think the two names were Jeff Porter and Mike Spicer, she was quoting.
we'll do some research, won't we? I need to hand over now because I've taken 10 minutes when I said there might be 5 minutes of the news from Autism Radio and Autistic Association. So, Harry, can we move over to the meat of today? The Facebook post on autisticradio.com, and I'll hand you over, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine. Don't worry about it. I did add it on myself, in fairness, because I did ask a question and you answered it, so that is fine. So thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is Live Unmasked for the 24th of November 2024. This is where we share the Facebook posts and talk about the Facebook posts that we have shared from the topics that are taken from them. And the first post is from Autism Discussion Page, which is a page of interest, and it says, helping children feel safe, accepted and competent. And what it's talking about is IQ in autism. Are they valid and reliable? Many assessments, especially in schools, rely heavily on IQ tests, which are tests of intelligence. Often the child gets a secondary diagnosis of cognitive impairment in addition to autism, or the child may be diagnosed as intellectually impaired but not autism. Unfortunately, intelligence testing is often very unreliable with autistic children. The scores are frequently much lower than their true cognitive abilities. There are many factors for this. Autistic people often have complex processing differences, including sensory processing, auditory processing, and delayed information processing. These processing issues interfere significantly with understanding what is expected, responding to verbal questions, directions, and interpreting the intent of the questions. Autistic people often have verbal communication problems, both receptively and expressively, while many of these tests rely heavily on auditory processing and verbal skills. These tests also require socially regulating face-to-face with an examiner, which is often extremely difficult for autistic children. In addition, task performance anxiety for many on the spectrum is very high in situations that puts them socially on the spot. They tend to freeze and panic under such conditions, or misinterpret what the examiner is expecting. Added to these are the problems with attention, hyperfocusing on details, or being very distracted, which will significantly interfere with task performance. Lastly, many autistic children have behaviour interference in repetitive, stereotypical behaviour, which often increases under pressure. With all these conflicting variables, the chances of getting an accurate read for autistic people is unlikely. Given the many variables autism creates for intelligence testing for autistic children, please be very careful in interpreting these results, especially when making diagnostic decisions. They historically underestimate the child's true cognitive abilities, resulting in misdiagnosis of cognitive impairments, misplacement in schools, and lower expectations for them cognitively and adaptively. Often these children have higher scores on the non-verbal sections and lower scores on the verbal sections for autistic children. Children with Asperger's, this was described here, may show the opposite with high verbal scores but lower non-verbal scores. In conclusion, the more severely impaired the autism, the more unreliable intelligence testing is. If testing is needed for autistics, try and use a non-verbal test like the lighter International Performance Scale or the Raven Progressive Matrices test. However, even with these, be suspicious if your child's results are low. If your child has communication and processing problems, there is a greater possibility the scores are suppressed. Be very suspicious of the intellectual impairment label. There's a good chance that it does not accurately reflect your child. The tests do not match the processing, communication, and learning style of your child. Since this article was written, the WAIS intelligence scale has built-in measurements for working memory and processing speed, both of which help the fidelity of testing autistic people. However, with many sensory and auditory processing difficulties on the spectrum, these results are still a misrepresentation of abilities. This series on labels, diagnoses, and co-occurring disorders can be found in the Green Book Autism discussion page on anxiety behaviour, school and parenting strategies, the link on Amazon. I know that was quite a mouthful, quite a lot to listen to, but I found it very interesting on the IQ and the descriptions that it's kind of coming across regarding such tests where things are face-to-face. And how things can be misinterpreted and how stereotypes in people's heads can be very damaging for the people that they're trying to help. What's other people's thoughts?
It's good to see that there's alternative tests, because initially I'm a wee bit wary of IQ tests, and the reasons are within what you read out. There is a history to the origins of IQ tests and what they've been applied for or to. So it's good to see that there are alternative. It's what do people expect from an intelligence test? I think that's the question.
Yeah, I totally agree. Intelligence, competence, expectation. I'm unsure. I mean, the IQ thing, it always kind of puzzles me. You know, the great IQ, being intelligent, or... And then it goes to the extreme examples of people who are autistic, who have these super skills and are looked as, you know, unfortunately, in my opinion, superhuman because of these super skills. But then people that have these super skills isn't identified anyway because the sort of test that they have done, and they've done it in such a way that it hasn't been recognised because of the test inability to realise that how autism or people with autism's experiences, especially children, you know, have difficulty in how tests are conducted, like putting you on the spot. Like, you know, I mean, I can feel it myself just talking about it being put on the spot. Even someone asking a question right now about myself, you know, when I'm in my mid-40s, you know, the delay of giving a so-called intelligent or full answer. You know, even it's difficult now, never mind childhood. But what the post does is it certainly brings up a lot of good questions, good points, and how things aren't what they seem, and how people should be more focused on being more flexible, and what these tests are all about. And certainly not putting children under pressure as well, which seems to be a big thing about your child being competent and intelligent, or whatever the words they want to throw at children, and the stress and the pressure that are put upon such.
I had some kind of intelligence test when I was a kid, and they used it to decide whether you went to the local comprehensive school or whether you had the opportunity of applying to a grammar school in a nearby town or go to a fairly local boarding school. If you hit some kind of benchmark, you got offered your pick of those last two. If you didn't, you had to go to the larger comprehensive school. And both myself and my friend are neurodivergent, in my opinion. I'm diagnosed, he's in my memory. And he was a young black fella, as you would call him now. In those days, you would probably use a different identity. I don't know what identity he uses. But he was my best friend, and he was talented in all kinds of ways. And he was bright. But we got divided. I went off because I got 100 and God knows what on this score, 140 or whatever it was, 160, I don't know, some even number, and he didn't. And it's down to a test that has some kind of usefulness in life, but to me doesn't really value intelligence in a constructive way for humanity. I'm much more into the idea of multiple types of intelligence, and then I think everyone should think of themselves as very intelligent, because whichever IQ version of intelligence you are on, you are probably making up for intelligences that other people don't have in other areas of you. And the suppression of people with this IQ test bollocks is unfair on us all, the whole population.
Yeah, it's putting people in boxes, isn't it? It feels. It's like creating a hierarchy. This person is sort of better than you, sort of thing. And I'm just kind of thinking this out loud. Putting certain people, whether they want to be or not, in a sort of exclusive club. Maybe they want to tap into people they can use people's intelligence, the way that the things can be. I mean, I remember hearing about the IQ test as a child and never understanding, what it means apart from apparently if you're high in it, you're very brainy and you can do almost anything. Obviously, that's not the case. And obviously, always wondering, where I would be. Because personally, for some reason, maybe it was just the way that I felt I was treated or the way I felt in society, that I felt that I was stupid in many ways, even though I know I'm not. But I did a lot of, I was quite bright, I was quite skilled in certain things, like English, doing things like writing, making up stories, things like that. And there was other things that it was because of interest as well. If you're not interested, you're not going to try, and you might be good at it if you try. But like maths and things like that. It's just I just remember that IQ thing about people saying, "Oh, that's where they tell you you're brainy," and then even then you're even thinking that's when people are telling that you are better than other people, and that never sits comfortable with me. And it's not fair on the people to say it to.
And that can be a curse as well, to find that out when you're really young and everybody else to kind of know it. And there's a line of thought that says, if you pass an IQ test, it just shows that you're good at passing IQ tests.
Yeah, I totally agree. The pressure on people, it must bring on people, people's families, people around you, or even within yourself, because you've been given this information, must be quite intense. Like, if you've been told something like that and you don't reach an expectation, or maybe from others, or even within yourself, because you've been given this information, be such a burden, especially for autistic, and you're an autistic person who has a tendency, like I do, to overthink, to overanalyze, sometimes kind of get into the past and regret the certain routes that you've taken, decisions you've made. It's all that comes into play, and all that can come into play when you're still young, because when you're in school and things like that, and you don't get the certain grades that you expected, you felt that you were intelligent enough to get. And even I feel like that myself without all this IQ stuff, because in school I was going through a hard time, and the thing they call the standard grades in Scotland, I felt that if I was in a better environment and I wasn't feeling such under pressure and I wasn't bullied and all that, I might have got better scores. Whether that would have made a difference to my life, I do not know. I mean, obviously that's going to affect different people, other people as well. It's just, anytime, even just reading that post, it's all of it. It's just pressure and contradictory and all that. And I don't think it helps anybody. Maybe I'm wrong because I'm looking from the outside, but it's interesting nonetheless, especially from an autistic perspective.
It's used to judge people, and I won't go down the more controversial route, connections there. Just at a very formative and young age, it can make a huge difference to someone's life. And that's unfair.
Justin has a quote. Justin says, "Yes, IQ is bollocks." And I feel at this particular moment in time, I tend to agree with Justin. So good evening, Justin. The next post is from Joy of Autism, which is a personal blog and described as a page is dedicated to my son Jacob and for all autistics and their family and friends. My goal is to inform, advocate, educate, and share. Smiles. And they've shared their own quote. And what it says is, autism parents don't compare their child to another autistic child. They understand that everyone on the spectrum has different support needs. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm wondering in what context you'd be comparing your autistic child to another autistic child. If that's what this is saying, yeah. So it's, yeah, this is parents. Yeah, this is they will be in a common environment and reacting to that. So, yeah, you wouldn't compare any child to any child. Really, it's not on.
I think basically, from my perspective, what it may be saying is we know about the autistic stereotype, and we know that every autistic person is different, and of course that includes children. And there may be comparisons made because one autistic child may behave in a certain way that another doesn't, and maybe a parent is talking to another, and that's been part of the conversation. I'm not saying that that's kind of been conflict or anything. It's just more on possibly a realisation and learning that that's the case. Learning that every child who's autistic or not is individual and unique and has a different journey in their lives, different kind of signs of struggle or signs of just a sign of way of how they behave, how they are, their being.
Yeah, this is a counter to the stereotyping, Harry. Yeah, get you.
And it's good for a parent or a carer to come out and say that. Because some may be caught in a trap, depends on their experience, that they may be expecting, because of what they've read and the advice they've been given, and other experiences of maybe a parent who had an autistic parent themselves or sibling or someone they know, and then they're not really. I mean, as a parent, I've not been a parent, so I don't know that experience. But what I can guess is that as a parent, and from other people that have been parents that I know of, like friends, or even my own parents, in a way, is they're learning all the time, even now. There's the own journey of that, and you don't always. It's like an education. You're kind of the learning experience. So there's things that you may not know at one time, assumptions you may make, and stuff like that. And it's just good that someone brings that out and just shares it, and then people may take it on board that make it a bit easier on themselves and their autistic children. The next post is a wee Christmassy one because we are getting close. And it's from Jordan James, who's a public figure. Autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, and generally neurodivergent photographer, parent, husband, advocate, ND specialist, author, and host of the Neurodivergent Experience podcast. I'm also a motivational speaker, so please email me for inquiries. And there's links there for people to contact. And what Jordan has shared is something that I can identify with. Anything Christmas before December the 1st winds me up something crazy. Maybe it's my autistic sense of right and wrong, but this obsession with starting Christmas the day Halloween ends, and even before, is consumerism at its absolute worst, in my opinion. Edit. So it seems it may have a lot to do with winter depression. So I have changed my mind about home decorating. I can identify that in many ways myself, even the home decorating bit, even though I've never done it. But then again, I don't have children and I live alone. But never mind about me. What's other thoughts?
Don't like home decorating in the winter, but it depends what the weather's like. I'm glad you put in the word consumerism there because it kind of identifies what he's feeling. It's a commercial aspect of it all. I remember my mother used to buy Christmas presents in the summer because they were cheaper then. But this thing of I think people just want to have fun sometimes, yeah, and they'll go for this and to put on a display and show themselves when you see decorations and lights going up extremely early. It's still in the middle of November. So, but he's focusing, I think, on the consumerist side, which is, high pressure for a lot of people.
Well, I say bar humbug to Mr. Scrooge, and whatever people want to do with fairy lights and stars and things brought from the forest and candles and beautifying the whole of their world in the months coming up to the winter festival, the better. I think what they're doing there is they're being a natural human being who's going back to the past, and they're finding what this season means, this season where it gets dark. And it's not to do with actual Christmas and Father Christmas and all those things. They're just laid on top of it. But the whole thing of being like this and looking forward to a festival and arranging ourselves to go be social and pretting ourselves up in various ways and doing daft things, the more the better. And way before December the 1st, sir, way before. Bring the whole lot in together.
It's a fair point, and I absolutely agree with you in that way, even though I'm sort of the bah humbug type. But the bah humbug that comes from me is because of the consumerism, the sort of the business thing, the people that it kind of gets thrown at you, and the things like that. I know it's going to happen. Don't get wound up, it happens. But the other side of things, when people begin to celebrate a little bit, like they decorate their gardens, decorate their homes, but especially decorating their gardens, because you see that, because there's a lot of people who decorate their gardens I don't know personally, but you go by it and it brights up a street. And the November, in fairness, is not a very uplifting month. It's kind of, the weather's never really that great. That's the time where it seems like and certainly in the UK anyway, where the time change, the clocks kind of change, where the evenings and the mornings, are extremely dark, and if they're not dark, if there's a bit of light, it's certainly gloomy. So lights, when they're on, does brighten the place up. It's a sort of festival light place. It does cheer the place up a little bit, and it shows you. And it does, and even the cynical me, it makes me look forward to what's ahead, because I love Christmas itself. I love coming together with the family. Me and my siblings generally meet up for a thing, just a couple of weeks before, the actual Christmas itself, because we obviously don't all come together, because families and all that do their own thing. Even though some do come down, and lucky for me, my parents are still here. So that's a kind of central place that some can go sometimes in some countries if they can make it. And the build up to it is pretty good in a way if you learn to ignore the things that annoy you. I think that's something I need to kind of teach myself is, the things that annoy you, so don't pay attention to it. The way things are. We live in a capitalist society. It's about making money. So they're going to throw things early and show things and do daft things. And even the adverts that may be quite infuriating. Some of the adverts are actually nice and colourful and things like that. So sometimes maybe you should just take it on the chin. But yeah, I do agree with what you're saying, Jules. It's like looking forward to this great festival. It's something to look forward for a lot of people. Christmas isn't always a nice time for people, but it can be uplifting for so many that've had a difficult time as well. And it can lift the community and the atmosphere. So who am I to moan about that? Although I do understand what Jordan has said in the post.
No, you're perfectly. People should moan about things that affect them, and that's perfectly fine. And this commercialism thing is the inequality thing. What you're having constantly is other people's very expensive lifestyles thrust right in your face, and you're being asked to come up to social standards when you haven't got the money to do it. But you can control this, and you can say bollocks to it, and you can strip it down to what's beautiful. Because I will tell you, one of the Christmases I can absolutely remember is the Christmas that I had, which was a grindle hen in a hostel a long way away from home, followed by a Christmas dinner the next day amongst a group of refugees in a charity, and I wasn't serving. So we don't have to allow the capitalist system to fuck up our festivals. We can strip it back to holly, to ripe nuts and apples, and just that little thing that's a bit special for you, and take minute beauty from those things.
I think I misunderstood the term home decorating.
Go on.
I thought he was going to start painting the walls or the doors and stuff.
Yeah, I think it was more about trees and streamers.
Each to their own.
I wouldn't want to do all that either. When it comes to decorating my house in terms of what you were thinking, Raymond, I would rather someone else did it, and someone else has always done it, with my assistance, of course. But of course, they were. I think Jordan was referring to the Christmas tree and all that going up, which I've never done in my home. And the reason I haven't done it in my home is not just about the bah humbug, and maybe it isn't that at all, really, to be honest. It's because I've always lived alone. My parents' house is 5 minutes from where I live. They do all the big Christmas tree and the decorations thing. My mum's really into it. She's got all these wee, the kind of Rudolph flashing nose thing, and she really loves it. My dad's a bit more cynical towards it, so it's quite, it kind of identifies with me. It's actually kind of both. It's like I appreciate my mother's kind of childlike kind of loving that place, but me and my dad kind of talk about the sort of kind of capitalistic stuff that we've been talking about a little bit here, and it sort of evens out because it's not like I'm sitting miserable and going, kind of moaning about the state of the things. It's like it's kind of sarcastically kind of passing comment, but enjoying the occasion as well because it's a kind of family occasion. In my experience, and it's always been a positive one. There's obviously things that have happened, like some family members are no longer with us and things like that makes it very somber at times, and that's understandable. But it's always, as a whole, a nice experience, and I try and remind myself not to get too wound up with the capitalistic things because that's the way things are, and it's always been since I've been around. So stop getting bloody wound up about it and just enjoy the festivities itself. Because as well, I mean, I visit my sister Helen, my sister-in-law Stacey. They decorate stuff for Halloween and all that as well, and I love being around all that. But I wouldn't do it in my own house, but I appreciate that in someone else's home. When it comes to like Christmas, it's absolutely fantastic. So, God, I've got tears in my eye, and I'm looking forward to it already after all my wee moans. So, yep, it's amazing how it can bring so many emotions.
Yeah, but the post is about how it's uncomfortable when it comes so early because it's probably painful for everybody, and the reasons it's painful for them are not necessarily about Christmas. They're about their own feelings of inequality, their own loneliness, their own inability to fit with all of the things that we're thrust at, these social conventions that we're excluded from. So I have every empathy with that version of the world. All I do is I try to call out and try and make a changing cry to try and push us in another direction. Because, yeah, do I feel a bit like the chart says? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I totally agree. The equalities thing does kind of, always has But in most recent times, it kind of brings it into, you know, more focus because, you know, the energy price, you know, prices of everything and the affordability of things has become so extreme. I know it's always been in a way, but it's like you get the news and all that. I don't watch the news, but you know, the general media talking about media crisis. People can't afford this, they can't afford that. But the same media kind of throw things out about how a perfect Christmas would look like, and that costs money, and that puts people under pressure. So yeah, I totally agree what you're saying and what Jordan's saying.
It's only a month to Christmas, chaps. We're looking forward to it.
Jingle bells.
Hark the herald angels sing.
Tra-la-la. I think I got that wrong. Not yet. Next week. I've got my
come
MP3
on.
ready.
Bring on Wizard and Merry Christmas, everybody. Come on, let's hear some of these jingles in the charity shops.
Yeah, I'm sure they're already there. I'm looking forward to Slade and Wizard and all the other stuff I listen to, but I don't like Paul McCartney's one. As much as I like Paul McCartney's music, that is awful. But I'll hear it anyway. So the next post is from Autistic Revolution, who are a community organisation and they're a magazine. Employment, creating neurodivergent affirming spaces, creativity, education, well-being. And it has all links for people to contact. And the website is autisticrevolution.com. And what they've announced is we've gained 236 followers, created 78 posts, and received 2,211 reactions in the past 90 days. Thank you all for your continued support. We could not have done it without you. And that's one of many posts and updates that Autistic Revolution has provided, you know, over the last year or so. I'm probably not doing it justice by saying that. And it's just great to share from Autistic Revolution, the magazine, because on previous broadcasts, podcasts, Facebook discussions that we've talked about is they bring so much information out there, so much inspiration, not just within themselves of how they've grown to be such a great online magazine themselves, but the people involved, the people that share from their platform, and how that can be so inspiring and so positive, you know, out with. And I'm saying that without actually reading a lot of the stuff that they provide. It just gives that vibe. And when I'm saying this, I'm going, why don't I read the damn thing? Because it just sounds so fantastic. And, you know, well done to them. What's other thoughts?
Didn't we discuss Autistic Revolution last week? We were fairly positive about them.
I do recall talking about them 2 weeks ago. They were sharing from their upcoming, or maybe they were talking about Unedited, and who there's a list of people that were involved in that. So I do recall that, and yes, we did, and it was a good long conversation, a good long discussion on that.
I'm wondering if they're talking about followers on Facebook.
I imagine so, because they're sharing on Facebook. And what they're saying is it's only in the last 90 days that they've gained over 200 followers, and they've created almost 80 posts and received over 2,000 reactions. So it's good I love sharing stuff that's like a milestone. And it's just like amazement, because I've had it myself, and we've had it, when people respond to us, smaller scale, but still, impactful. And it's just good to share these milestones and to show that the work that, that we do and the work that they do is very beneficial, and it is impactful on a lot of people.
I think it confirms that people are looking for what they offer.
The next post is from Effie Purple Bean Autistic Artist, who is an ND artist currently recovering from craniotony. I relearnt to draw with my non-dominant hand. Creator of Violet, original character and illustrator, and co-author of Violet the book. Professional artist and illustrator, love and light to you. And there's a link to Purple Bean's art shop on the Facebook page. And what Effie has shared is a quote and a nice purple background with a love heart at the end. We're alive, disabled or not, we deserve to live, not just exist in the background. My dark purple handwriting on a digital blurple watercolour background. Everyone deserves to truly live, not be shoved into the background. You deserve to live. You deserve to enjoy your life. If you are disabled, then things should be accessible. All the love and light, beautiful people. Love hearts and stars. I think that's very beautiful, very impactful, and it certainly got my heart pumping. What's other thoughts?
Your purple heart. Yeah, it's good to see someone experiencing joy, activating their joy, being creative with their joy, and wanting other people to experience that joy too, of being yourself and doing your thing and creating. I was curious about how she was relearning to use another hand. Is that correct? Draw with my non-dominant hand. So that's drawing. What I was curious about was when we learn to write, which hand we use. It's like, is that natural and automatic? And this whole thing of like how you're taught or trained at school to do basic things like write or draw. And it may be that some people are forced. I think there's a history of this, forced to use the hand that they're not that comfortable with. Although now, if I try and write with my other hand, I can't do it. Maybe I could train myself, but I don't know. But to love our creativity that much, all power to her.
From what I've read from previous posts from Effie Purple, is she went through, illness, medical conditions. I'm not sure, a stroke or something to do with the brain. it's, you know, this is me making assumptions. I've read it, but I've not went into great detail, you know. But it was a very major, impactful, you know, physical, you know, distress. And it's like recovery from that and learning to do some things again. And through that, it's inspirational because it's someone who's been through and still going through a tough time, you know, through health, who has a skill, who has a gift, who is teaching themselves or being taught, probably teaching themselves, but, you know, inspiring themselves to learn and still feel that they're able to do what they did previous to that medical emergency. I mean, this is me getting assumptions, so I'd apologise if I, you know, have been inaccurate. But that's from my perspective. I'm seeing it. Someone's been through hard times medically, health-wise, but still pursuing the skill and the talent that they have to inspire others and to show that such difficult circumstances can be overcome. And I love that because it can inspire so many people that are feeling very low due to health issues, whether it be physically or mentally, bad experiences, the things that life can throw at you, and just posts that the FA Purple can just share and show what can be done can be so inspirational and can help so many people, and I love stuff like that.
That's kind of the thing about online representations and expressions, isn't it? It's definitely moving as it is, but we can never know the entire background or story of anyone. And in a way, we kind of almost have to make assumptions or, relate to it in a simpler form.
The next post is from Emergent Divergence, the neurodivergent ramblings of David Gray Hammond. And what is shared is about an event coming up in January, and it's called Is Autism a Disorder?, which he is presenting. And the recording will be available for ticket holders and free resources for ticket holders to be announced. And what David is saying is, please do share this so more people can see it. If you would like to explore the neurodiversity movement and concept around how we understand autism as a society, then I would love to see you at my webinar in January. There will be a recording for anyone with a ticket, as well as free resources that will be announced closer to the time. There are different price options to make it as accessible as possible. And the date that's been announced for this webinar is Monday, the 20th of January, 2025, 7 p.m, which I am assuming is UK time. And there's a link to Eventbrite. And this has been shared for information so people are aware that this is happening. What's other people's thoughts? I mean, the title itself is quite impactful. Is autism a disorder?
Is that title referring to the acronym ASD? Because it involves the word disorder, doesn't it? Originally, and now it's being kind of rebranded, as it were.
I don't think ASD is being branded. Autism spectrum disorder is written all over everything now. ASD is still the term. That's the medical term for people with autism. The alternative nomenclature, or however you say that, is really a pressure group change. It's the advocacy movement gradually pointing out the language matters, and then offering alternative parts of the language that gradually get used when people want to be polite to us. But the ASD will continue in the literature. I like to change ASD into autism social difference, or autistic social difference. But I can't see that catching on.
Yeah, I mean, anytime this conversation comes up about how autism is described, as I go through my own personal journey. But then again, my own personal journey with autism goes back to the late 90s, 1998 to be precise. And the diagnosis was Asperger's syndrome, which is now out of date and not described, or not supposed to be officially described, although that's still made as a description by people. Not in a bad way, it's just something in language that is described.
In a way, though, Harry, Asperger's syndrome was a way of saying autistic but bright in some way. You know, intelligent but still autistic. It's kind of like you got a pat on the head if you're Asperger's syndrome, didn't you?
Yes, absolutely right. Because when that was being described at the time, when people were talking to me about it, they were talking about autism in such a negative way. Like, some people with autism, they were detached from the world. But you're not detached from the world. You're kind of higher up, or high in the hierarchy, which is not really comfortable, really, when you think about it. But there's this kind of, you get the characteristics, and that's why you've been put on. That's why that terminology is being given on you, and apparently that kind of diagnosis was only starting to be given out, as far as I was told, in the 90s anyway, like early 90s, and I'm talking about 1998, so it was still fairly recent. And as people did hear about autism at the time, they had not a clue what Asperger's syndrome was. And see, try to explain that to people at the time, especially the word syndrome. It's like, it was like you were a weirdo with a tag. It was like a justification of acting strange. But people didn't understand it, so you didn't feel vindicated of any kind. It was just something that you had to dig into to try and get an explanation for. And the thing about at that time is that I felt it was a disorder. But since I had a life, as I've said before, I went through a life journey, which has taken 25 years, 26 years, until I feel it's an identity now. But there was a time where it felt like it was like a superpower, a skill, a superpower, just say, because that's the three things that people I've heard identified with autism is disorder, superpower, and identity. And I think a lot of people go through that journey. Some people stay with one label, which may be disorder, depending who they are and their experience. Some may actually start feeling the superpower at the beginning. It's just that sort of thing about uniqueness of people, individuals, and how their lives came across autism in the first place. But it's something worth being. It's something. say that again. It's something worth exploring. Just that question. It sounds controversial, but it isn't really. But then again, is autism a disorder? But then I'm saying it from a position of a journey that I've been in that's been mostly, at least at this present moment, being positive. There's a lot of people that don't have that. The next post is from Asking Autistics, which is a podcast by autistic people. And what they've shared is a quote, certainly a message. And what it says is the neurodivergent urge to say ow when you lightly bump into something that didn't hurt, but to go excessively quiet when you actually do get hurt. Can people identify with that?
Here's that autistic serendipity again. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier in the 444.
Yeah, the sort of the medical assistance requirement for advice, for assistance that may be urgently needed, but the inconvenience it feels of doing so because you have to connect with authority, you need to connect with other people, and that the way the autistic mind can go is the assumption that, like for instance, my own experience, which I talked about earlier on, was blood and urine, which wasn't painful, but what has been described as it may be something serious. So there's all this kind of thing, even though this thing I was talking about, the inconvenience of being far from home at the discover, I was far from home when this was sort of discovered, and it's like, how do I deal with this far from home? And then I decided I'll wait till I get home and then deal with it, and it has been dealt with since. That's one sort of experience, personal experience of it. It's like, if you need assistance, because sometimes as autistic person, I feel that I can be oversensitive to a lot of things. So sometimes when a medical instance does come up, it's like, is this actually a medical issue, or am I thinking too much about it? I'm not talking about hypochondria. I'm just thinking about overthought and overcautious. Although it is recommended to be cautious anyway, but how cautious you could be. I mean, it just creates. I think the thing as well is it's about, you have to get in contact with someone in authority, or just get in contact with another person. It's just something I feel sometimes I just don't want to deal with. Like a breakup of routine that's been set out. Strange as it may, it's strange as it may sound.
Sorry, I thought I'd unmuted myself there earlier, and then I started coughing. Hope you never got that. I'm getting a reading here about communication. This thing of, like, that when your spatial awareness feels restricted or impinged. And so sometimes I'll find myself audibly reacting to the environment, like, oh bugger, something like that, because you just keep hitting things or having little accidents. Whereas when there is a hurtful or serious situation, the pressure sometimes can be to not communicate. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that.
I agree with everything you said. but it's not just about the pressure of not being able to communicate. I find that if I am in a serious situation where I've really hurt myself, I often can't really communicate very well, or I would choose not to because I'm dealing with something else and something else is taking up my need, and I don't find shouting out, shrieking particularly helpful, even though I've read that swearing a lot actually is supposed to give you some kind of anaesthetic.
No, I do the swearing and cursing at the small things.
The next post is from Autism Spectrum Disorder. A community page, and the description says, finding out at 58 that I am living on the autism spectrum is like finding out the name of the street I've been living on for 58 years. Marsha England, WordPress.com. And what she shared is about disorder/issues that often accompany, I'll say that again, disorders and issues that often accompany autism. And it's got the kind of rainbow colours umbrella, autism. Fragile, epilepsy, ADHD, gastro issues, motor difficulties, bipolar, communication issues, sleep issues, eating issues, intellectual disability, obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety, and sensory issues. One of these is too many. Most are not familiar, but to me, I'll say that again. One of these are too many. Most are not familiar to me, but the truth is, most are. What's other people's thoughts?
It feels like the late diagnosis thing of being swamped with information, useful or not useful. And again, we're back in the realm of language just discussed.
Yeah. I mean, the words used, sensory issues, can identify with. Anxiety, yes. Obsessive compulsive disorder, I don't know if I have that, but there can be a bit of obsession in a way, overthinking, etc. Over preparing, maybe. Going down a bit, sleep issues, yes. I don't think I've slept properly in a long time. I tend to nap more than actually sleep. Sometimes I stay up all during the night, on Facebook, listening to people talking about the universe, space, or comedy or whatever. A lot of it during the night is looking at information. I've even done the Wikipedia description of what a mirror is and what time is, and obviously I know it's going to take time, it's good, pardon the pun, to go through the information and how it actually explains it. Communication issues, I've had that. Gastro issues, is that referring to sore stomachs and things like that? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure
Yep.
someone will say. Other ones, ADHD, Unsure. Not something I'm diagnosed with, but I can get quite hyper in many ways, but that doesn't mean it's ADHD. Fragile is certainly a feeling that I can come across in many ways, especially if it's been kind of a long week, or doesn't need to have to be that. Fragile is a word that I can identify with. Also, some of them are quite identifiable to me personally.
Honestly, I want a special show on what you've been researching through the night, Harry, because I do similar things. It's kind of like a stim, if that's the correct phrase. I find it quite stimulating to pursue information, and obviously it's to relieve myself in some sense. I can go deep into etymology of words and stuff. So obviously there's a need there and a drive to experience a kind of joy. So what you've been pursuing would be great interest. But anyway, on this, I'm trying to think, you were saying something about, this brings up something that's been bugging me all week. It's like, and I felt like asking it today. Maybe I should have done it in the 444, but it's like, it's a big question, really. It's like, how do people identify their autism? Like, what is the major thing that makes you know that your diagnosis is correct?
From what I remember, before my diagnosis, the reason that I got diagnosed in the first place was through crisis. I kind of broke down, and it was in school because I had a hard time in school, and mentally distressed, basically. So, but what happened, because I was 16 at the time, and I wanted to continue education, I ended up into an adolescent unit in Glasgow, Cartnavel, Royal Hospital at the time. It's no longer there, they've moved it elsewhere, but at the time it was there. And I had a school, and I had a timetable. And I recall, and there was this meeting that they had once a week where they would tell you updates and changes. And I remember they changed something from one day to another. I can't remember the reason why, but they changed it. And I went ballistic because they changed something in the timetable which I was used to for the last 2 or 3 months. And I think that must have been identified quite strongly to autism, because routine and changing routine, is quite distressing. It still is right now. In fact, a lot of the routine that I'm in, I actually control in many ways. And if I don't control, I certainly have a seat at a table which negotiates when things happen, which makes it easier to prepare for if there are any changes. And I think that, I wouldn't say it'd be a clincher, but that must have been a big indication that gave me the diagnosis I eventually got, maybe a month or so afterwards, is the way I reacted to routine change.
Yeah, especially with late diagnosis, it's not all autistic people are the same. So looking for terms to compare yourself with can be a bit unproductive at times, because you think, I don't have that, or maybe I have that, but I'm not sure. So to hear that was good. Thanks, Harry, because I'm still trying to identify what brought me to the late diagnosis. And in this post, I can see that this person's looking at a lot of the information that's out there.
I think the reason that you're experiencing this as a question is because of the late diagnosis, because when you've gone through decades of your life without it becoming obvious in any way beforehand, it puts you in a more subtle kind of category, and that subtle kind of category has only really been identified in the last few decades, and it's being defined now by the neurodiversity movement. One thing I can't give you any one thing, because the way it was described to me, it was described to me by my wife, who'd spent a lot of time looking into the neurodiversity paradigm, and she sat me down and she talked to me about it and talked about all the things that she had just read, and we took a framework of my life and matched them up, and there was just so many points of comparison that made sense in what she was saying, and then the rest of it goes into a complete period of questioning that and testing that and pushing against that, and then you start to meet other autistic people and you get an overwhelming sense sometimes of an empathy, especially if they're in a distressed situation, because you can feel exactly what they're feeling, perhaps in a, well, sorry, that's an autistic overstatement there. You can really involve yourself in what they're feeling in a way that you can see that other non-autistic people can't. So that happens to me often enough, and that I found painful, and just that feeling painful about seeing how somebody else is trying to describe their situation means somehow it's getting into how I feel about autism.
Yeah, the only thing I can put it down to is discontent, a general discontent in life, and all the negative terms that were in my mind and in others' minds through that period until the diagnosis are possibly what identify my condition. So things like saying work shy, lazy, lackadaisical, aloof, various things that you think were just normal, but you were a kind of a negative feature in you where you weren't quite fitting in or doing well. So later on, I think you can look back and see that some of those things may have been persistent conditions, and there's just a new way of looking at it now.
I think you definitely get the opportunity to forgive yourself and remove some of those patterns of self flagellation, self criticism that you have been effectively taught by society. And that is a process of release that takes a while. But my feeling, is it 5 or 6 years in? I don't know now. Actually, it's not even that. Where are we? 2020. I knew in 2019. I got diagnosed in 2020. So, I don't know, 4.5, 5.5 years, whatever. It's... I think I'm happier working out at this stage my autism. And I think the revelation of neurodiversity gives me an identity I didn't have before, but it also helps me with making sense of life and forgiving myself and enjoying my life better than it did before. Not everyone's going to feel that, maybe for a long time, but it is a release that everyone keeps talking about when they come and talk on the Late Diagnosis show or anything on Autistic Radio.
I just get this conclusion that I was right all along. I've just got a wee bit of PTSD to get over.
I would support you in that, Raymond. I know some people will listen to that and they'll think that's a fucking arrogant statement, but it isn't. It's a personal statement about some things in us. And yes, we were right about ourselves all along, and it's a vindication of some of our behaviours in the past that rejected things and said, no, this isn't okay. So I think that's a good thing for you to feel, mate, personally.
Yeah, I never imposed on other people. Basically, I compromised. So it's not arrogance.
No, mate, most autistic people get shoved around, and they get shoved around in ways they don't understand a lot of the time. It's very unlikely. That whole sense of arrogance that is put upon us in some of the stereotypes, well, surgeons and all that kind of thing. Yeah, you can build that character. I can use that character sometimes. I can play that role if you want, if I need to tell people what to do. But usually the word arrogance is resentment of somebody else's position or knowledge or power.
Thank you very much, everyone. That was a great discussion tonight from all the posts that have been shared. I'd like to thank everyone who has shared the posts that we've talked about tonight. It's been very educational, very insightful, very inspiring, as always. I'd like to thank Jules and Raymond and Justin for being involved in the conversation and giving their thoughts and opinions and views. So this is Live Unmasked for the 24th of November 2024, which is part of Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is here every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States, on Facebook Live and Podbean. So thanks again for everyone. I really enjoyed this conversation. And always, when it comes to the end, I look forward to doing it again next week. So thank you and good night. Now over to Jules.
Thanks, Harry. Really, wow, what conversations this evening. A lot of hearts on sleeves here, and maybe that's the important thing here at Autistic Radio. There's an authenticity to it. This part of the programme, I go through the open meeting for Autistic Radio, and sometimes we talk about the charity that makes Autistic Radio possible, Autistic Association, a fully autistic APO. The main event this week has been